I warmly welcome you all to the 3rd International Young Folklorist Conference 2026. It is a great honor to have such distinguished scholars and young researchers with us today. I would like to respectfully invite our esteemed chair. Am I audible to you? I'm sorry to do
Yes, you're audible.
Okay. So Chair Dr. Mekhala Chattopadhyay, Assistant Professor of English, Govt Kakatiya PG College, Jagdalpur, Chhattishgarh. And the presenters, Abhishek Chakravorty, Assistant Professor of English, Department of Humanities, Midnapore City College, Thinking Forest and Feeling Roots, Plant Sentience in Folk Cosmology of Northeast Indian Tribes. Second, Tasfia Tasmin Meshu, Bangladesh University of Business and Technology, the role of YouTube and Facebook in presentation of folklore, Bangladesh context. Third, Ajisha, a research scholar, Sankaracharya University of Sanskrit, Kalady, Kerala, Harvest and Purity, a subjunction. Fourth, Ruchi, Pandey and Mansi, research scholars, University of Lucknow, Vernacular time and folk culture in the ecological imagination of Amitav Ghosh. For Meenakshi U and Barkha, postgraduate student, IIT Madras. Pooja Malapul, independent research, Bhatkumar deep inquiries in the eraser and placemaking process of the living heritage. 7. Sanogita, as assistant professor, Sree Krishna Swami College for Women. And I want to inform you more one thing that each and every presenter have 20 minutes presentation limit. So I would like to hand over to our honorable chair.
Thank you, Moitri, and thank you to all the participants for being present here, and Rusha and others who are organizing this conference. I would like to call the first participant, Abhishek Chakravorty, Assistant Professor of English, Department of Humanities, Midnapore City College. His presentation is titled Thinking Forests and Feeling Roots, Plant Sentience in the Folk Cosmologies of Northeast Indian Tribes. Please start your presentation. You will have 15 minutes of presentation time. So your time starts now. Please start your presentation.
Thank you, ma'am. Sharing my PPT. I think it's visible. Ma'am, can you see my PPT?
Yes, I can see your PPT.
Okay, thank you.
It will be better if you make it the slideshow, and then it will be like we can see the entire screen. Yeah.
I think it's visible to you now.
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so good afternoon, everyone. Myself, Abhishek Chakravorty, Assistant Professor of English, Department of Humanities, Midnapore City College. And today I'm presenting on Thinking Forest and Feeling Roots, Plant Sentience in the Folk Cosmologies of Northeast Indian Tribes, and particularly with a focus on sacred groves and plant bioethics, mainly in the folk narratives of the Lepcha, Khasis, and the Garo communities of Northeast India. Our discussion, and give me a minute, the slides are not changing. Okay. Our discussion centers majorly on 3 points. The first one, understanding critical plant studies and its philosophical and ethical foundation. The second one is exploring the indigenous recognition of plant agency, focusing on the Lepcha, Khasi, and Garo communities. And third one is all about linking these indigenous practices to critical plant studies and environmental posthumanism, highlighting implication for sustainability and ecological ethics. The overarching argument is that plants are not passive objects in the environment. They are sentient, relational, and ethical significant beings. By learning from indigenous knowledge, we can develop a post-humanist approach that challenges anthropocentrism and speciesism. Let us begin with critical plant studies, particularly if we know it as a CPS. Now, CPS emerges as a field at the intersection of environmental posthumanities and plant ethics. Traditional Western philosophy, influenced by Aristotle's scala natura and Hegelian ideas, considered plants as inferior and passive forms of life. Plants have long been marginalized in discourse, often seen merely as resources or background objects. Now, when we are talking about plants, obviously we're supposed to talk about Michael Murder, who in his in his book, Plant Thinking, A Philosophy of Vegetal Life, which was published in 2013, observes, to quote him, plants are other than human life forms that dwell in the margins of thought, silently sustaining but rarely acknowledged. Now, CPS challenges this particular marginalization. It emphasizes that plants are sentient beings capable of relational interaction. Now, again, I'm quoting Matthew Hall, and particularly his book, Plants as Person, A Philosophical Botany. He adds that plants, to quote him, teach us to consider life as interdependence, diversity, and mutual flourishing. Now, posthumanism, which critiques anthropocentrism and speciesism, aligns naturally with CPS. It extends ethical concern and agency to all forms of life, moving beyond the human-centered worldview. Now, that it is to be noted that posthuman ethics expands moral consideration not only to animals, but also to plants and inanimate matter. Now, CPS advocates for a vegetal deconstruction of metaphysics, as it has been stated by Michael Murder, describing that aiming for practical understanding of plant life and an ethical approach to ecological care. The field insists that plants are active participants in the ecosystem, shaping the environment and interacting with other beings. Now, go to the next slide. We are supposed to say that plants are not passive. They exhibit complex forms of intelligence and environmental awareness. Michael Murder has highlighted that plant intelligence is, to quote him, rooted mode of being and thinking, focused on plan, place, and context. They have biochemical and hormonal networks, and this is actually making them pretty much organic, allowing communication internally and with the surroundings. Maybe as human beings, we are not aware of their communication procedure because we lack the networking, the understanding of their particular network. Now, Monica Gangliano and her colleagues, they emphasize that CPS integrates ethics, cognition, agency, communication, and aesthetics. The concept of plant blindness, it is a very important concept, and it has been coined by James Wonder Sree and Elizabeth Sushler. It refers to the idea that it is actually the inability to recognize the importance of plants in the biosphere, and the inability lies within us, the human beings. This blindness, it limits our understanding of ecological systems and undervalues plant agency. Stacy Alaimo's transcorporeality provides a very powerful theoretical framework that humans are always intermeshed with the more than human world, and our bodies are inseparable from the environment. Plants, through their rooted presence and environmental connectivity, exemplify this intermeshed existence. They contribute to the atmosphere, sustain life, and participate actively in shaping the ecosystem. Critical plant studies encourages us to move beyond anthropocentric and utilitarian views and recognize plants as active, communicative organisms. They are communities of growth, generating multi-species assemblages and enabling life to flourish across ecological network. Now, the next slide, we will be talking about the lecture narratives, and particularly we are moving to indigenous knowledge. And the lectures of Sikkim, Darjeeling, and Kalimpong, they provide a remarkable examples of vegetal ethics, identifying themselves as Rongpo group or children of the snow and of the gods. The lectures share an intimate connection with plants and the environment. In Lapcha tradition, plants were gifts from deities, providing food, shelter, and medicine. Medicinal plants that the plants used by lectures, Ram Fayet, Humjong, and Sangbong, these are some of the local names, are considered divine agents of healings. Shamans, known as the Mun and Bongting, they communicate with these plants to cure ailments, highlighting a relational and ethical understanding of plant life. And some of the festivals that when we are talking about Tendong Lo Ramfat, they actually worship Mount Tendong, where vegetation is believed to have protected the lectures from a devastating flood. Plants here are not passive, rather than they are actually life-saving actors and integrated into both mythology and ecological practice. Other lecture folk narratives, such as A Tale of Two Trees, anthropomorphize the rhododendron and the Himalayan alder tree, portraying emotions, agency, and destiny. The rhododendron's growth and the alder tree's fate reflect the plant's ethical presence and relationality. Anthropomorphism, in this context, is not a literary device, but a cultural method of recognizing plant agency. The lecture practice of shifting cultivation respects plant life, living land, fallow to allow regeneration, demonstrating sustainable and ethical engagement with plant. The next slide, we will be talking about the Khasi perspective. The Khasi community, similarly, they demonstrate vegetal spirituality through sacred groves and narratives. And their sacred groves, which are known as Law Kintang, Law Lingdo, and Law Niam, preserve biodiversity, enforce taboos, and maintain spiritual balance. Michael Murder notes that the plants possess their own temporality and spatiality. Tales such as the legend of Mount Sophetbeng portray tree as ladders connecting heaven and earth, symbolizing an ecological and spiritual mediation. The tree is a conduit for life force and connectivity, serving as an axis mundi, a central point of cosmic and ecological significance. Another story, the name of the story is The Seven Clans, introducing the oak tree Diengei, whose uncontrollable growth punishes human wrongdoing. That we can say the tree demonstrates a kind of a vegetal resistance to anthropomorphic activities, anthropocentric activities, anthropogenic activities, and it represents a kind of autonomy, reminding humans of their vulnerability. That yes, that they have the vegetal bodies, they have the capability to punish us for our misdoings. Now, that H.O. Mori, that he captures the Khasi ethos, to quote him, a Khasi lives with nature and nature lives with him. This statement embodies the eco-theantric vision, a philosophy where human and plant life are mutually dependent and they are ethically intertwined. Sacred groves function as ecological and spiritual and cultural sanctuaries, highlighting plant ethics in practice. Now, going to the next slide, we will be talking about the Garo plant bioethics. And we know the Garo community, they also emphasizes vegetal agency through sacred trees and their own ritual practices. And particularly when we are talking about the fig trees, and they are very important, they're central to their fertility rituals. And particularly when we are talking about the bamboo groves as well, they're involved in the initiation and death ceremonies. Now, in D.S. Rangamothu's text, The Folktales of the Garos, that from where we are talking the first story, the first tree describes the first tree created alongside the earth, illustrating that plants as procreators and ancient agents. Another story, The Birth of the Banyan Tree, narrates a child transformed into a tree, highlighting human-plant connectivity and mutual dependence. Now, another story, the Veram Jambala, portrays banyan trees as part of cultural and social life, where women swing on its roots, singing songs of love. So it's represent a very powerful connection. These stories integrate plants into social, spiritual, and cultural identity, demonstrating that vegetal life is not separate but intertwined with human existence. Now, to support this, the argument that I can actually talk about Deborah Burt Rose, that one of the post-humanist philosophers, who observed that indigenous ecological ethics promote, to quote her, proximity, responsibility, and connection to the country and its living beings. These principles extends critical plant studies and post-human ethics into a practical indigenous life. Now, through the lens of CPS and indigenous practices, we can see that the plants are ethical, relational, and intelligent actors. And particularly when we're talking about the lecture Khasi and Garo communities, the community members, they model a kind of a post-human ecological ethics where human coexisting with vegetal life rather than dominated. There is a kind of a mutual respect between the vegetal lives and the community members. And so we can say that the sacred groves, ritual practices, and the folk narratives, they actually codify plant agency, challenging anthropocentrism and speciesism. And by recognizing plants as sentient beings, we can develop a kind of a sustainable environment practice, and we can decolonize the ecological thinking. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present. So if there are any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thank you, Abhishek, for your relevant research on CPS. It is a very important field at present. and the sentience of plants and the mutual dependence of humans and plants. We will take up questions at the end of the session if time permits, but thank you for your presentation.
Thank you,
Now,
ma'am. Thank you very much.
now I would like to call the next participant, who is Tasfiya Tasmin Mishu, Bangladesh University of Business and Technology. The topic of her presentation is the role of YouTube and Facebook in preservation of folklore, Bangladesh's context. Tasfiya, please start your presentation. Tasfiya Tasmin. Yes, please
Thank you,
start your
ma'am.
presentation. There is a slight change in the announcement, like time that you get, time duration. It is 10 minutes. Please try to wind up within that time period. Yeah, you can start your presentation.
My presentation title is The Role of YouTube and Facebook in Preservation of Folklore's Bangladeshi Context. In this era of the digital revolution of the 21st century, folk literature and tradition are no longer confined to the remote corners of rural villages. Instead, they have gained a vibrant new life in the virtual space. YouTube and Facebook have emerged as transformative forces in preserving and revitalizing Bangladesh's rich folk heritage, encompassing folk music, folk tales, traditional festivals, and indigenous crafts like Nukshi Katha or pottery. This study explores the paradigm shift from oral tradition to digital documentation, highlighting how social media bridges the gap between traditional practitioners and the modern audience. YouTube is currently functioning as an expansive, decentralized digital repository of folk music, where the performance of marginalized and grassroots artists are archived, preventing them from fading into oblivion. Facebook is fostering a sense of virtual community by connecting rural folk festivals and fairs with urban civic life through dedicated groups, pages, real-time live streaming. The main objective of this study is to analyze the mechanisms through which these digital platforms project Bangladesh's endangered folk culture into a global stage while making it relatable and trendy for the younger generation. The research employs a qualitative methodology involving content analysis of selected influential Facebook pages and niche YouTube channels dedicated to folk culture. Ultimately, this research provides a comprehensive outlook on how technology can act as a catalyst for a cultural renaissance in Bangladesh. Facebook roles in preserving folklore. In this article, we'll discuss in detail the multifaceted role of Facebook in preserving folklore, building a community through groups and pages. The most powerful aspects of Facebook is the facility to create groups or pages based on specific topics. People interested in folk literature have now created numerous groups named Bangla Lokosangskriti, Lokoganer Ashor, Chittaganger Maizbhandari Gan, etc. These groups are not only a place for exchanging information but also a large digital community where expertise from home and abroad are involved. As a result, a song sung by the voices of the ruler elderly or a picture of a rare manuscript spreads worldwide in an instant. There are numerous folk culture based groups and pages on Facebook. In these groups, old folk songs are shared. New areas of digital preservation, live broadcast, revival instinct traditions, social and economic recognition of artists, assistance in research and data collection, awareness and cultural movement, promotion and preservation of various branches of folk literature, folk songs and musics, folk festivals and rituals, jatrapala and folk drama. YouTube role analysis. YouTube is a digital archive. YouTube is a video based platform where uploaded content is preserved for the long term. If you capture and upload videos of folk songs, folk dances, folk religious festivals, it becomes a permanent document for future generation. Earlier, folk songs could only be heard by people in a specific area. Now, a video reaches the whole world. This has made it easier to preserve folk heritage, revival of extinct traditions, global promotion and cultural exchange, economic opportunities for artists, educational and research assistance, involvement of the young generations. Preservation of various folklore on YouTube, folk songs and baul music. YouTube is now the largest repository of Bengali folk songs, songs by hundreds of unknown artists, starting from Lalon Hasan Raja, Shah Abdul Karim, Udisi, are being preserved on YouTube. YouTube special features for saving global accessibility and promotion, possibility of permanent preservation, benefits of subtitles and translations, providing basic research materials, huge collection at low cost, real examples and success stories. Rodela channel, one of the most popular YouTube channels in Bangladesh. Rodela regularly publishes videos on baul songs, bhatiali and rural culture, which are very popular with the young generation. Lalon Giti channel. Numerous channels are dedicated solely to Lalong songs, where rare recordings and live performances are preserved. How to make YouTube more effective: institutional initiatives and cooperation, providing training and technology to rural artisans, protection of copyright law, creating multilingual content. Folklore is the soul of Bangladesh's cultural heritage. In the digital age, Facebook and YouTube are playing a groundbreaking role in preserving folk literature. However, for sustainable preservation, it is essential to ensure institutional initiatives, ethical practices, and technical expertise. With proper planning and awareness, these platforms can establish Bangladesh's folk heritage in the world. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Tasfiya. Thank you for your insights and detailed understanding of how technology can mediate in heritage preservation as well as proliferation across generations and across the world. Thank you so much. I would like to call the next participant for her presentation, Ajisha N, research scholar, Sree Sankaracharya, University of Sanskrit, Kalady, Kerala. The topic of her presentation is Harvest and Purity, a Subjugation. Ajisha, are you there?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible. Please start your presentation.
Okay, ma'am. I'm just sharing my screen. Yes. Is my slide visible?
Yes, it is visible.
Hello. Okay. So I'm Ajisha. I'm a research scholar from the Department of English, Sree Sankaracharya, University of Sanskrit, Kalady. My paper is titled as Harvest and Purity, a Subjugation. The paper investigates the role of power dynamics in folklore and how folklore is used as a tool of subjugation by analyzing the harvest traditions and the notion of purity as stated in Thagri Shivashankara Pillai's novels Randidangari and Chemmin. First of all, I think I can skip this. First of all, I just want to mention the pattern of folklore transmission as suggested by Carvalho Neto. This is the diagram that he suggested. Every folklore has a specific motive. Folklore possesses a source group and a follower or a receiver group, which in course of time loses this compartmentalization due to its wider acceptance and transmission. Each group simultaneously acts as a receiver group and the source group. The receiver group adds or denies things which they seem suitable for their culture and community or for an easy practicality. Thus, these groups become another source group. The process follows the pattern of a chain and it is continuous and dynamic. The novels I have selected are Randidangari and Chemmin by Thagri Shivashankara Pillai. And the novel Randidangari is first published in 1948 and its English translation was published in 1968. It depicts the Kuttanad, the life of peasants in Kuttanad, a place in Kerala. This is the picture of Kuttanad. It is known as the rice bowl of Kerala, and in Malayalam it is called as the Nellara, Keralathinte Nellara. Geographically, Kuttanad is situated below the sea level, and it is surrounded by rivers, backwaters, and the seas. And Kuttanad has a speciality of cultivating rice in the fields that are always surrounded by water because it is lower to the sea level. Kuttanad won the title as the rice bowl of Kerala because of the hardships the Kuttanadan peasants experienced. It's a long and continuous process of farming. The watery land is set for paddy cultivation by building bund. Bunds are the mud walls erected across the watery lands as rifts to separate them as fields from the surrounding water bodies. The fields are prepared by pumping out water from the rifted lands. Then the lands is prepared to sow seeds. The fields need continuous scrutiny for keeping them safe from sinking. The high tides and rains cause damage in the fields, breaking the bunds. Kuttanada peasants face lots of hardships in maintaining the fields and the crops intact. They have to sacrifice their lives for the fields. Even the peasants are buried alive in the marsh to use them as the basement for the bunds. Landlords order the peasants' hands and to tie the hands and legs of the peasants and to hold the soil and buried underneath the water to hold the soil from washing out. Bunds are made over such human basements. The landlords make the peasants believe that it is their duty to serve and feed the whole humanity, and they are bound even to lose their lives. The folklore in Randarangari says it is the month of Tulam, and the time for the Paraveli should be observed and fixed. This is the day when all the servants of the farmers gather together. There is a feast that day. Since then, the peasants of the Punjapadam, Parayas and Polayas have observed a fast with celibacy. Thus, men are allowed. Here, the Parayas and Polayas are the castes which are categorized in the Dalits, and Puraveli is the date where one should start cultivation. And so it says that peasants should follow a strict celibacy. Thus, all the men of the peasant group are allowed only to sleep in the fields regardless of day and night, while their wives sleep in their kotil. Kotil means the shelter where they live. And they believe that the fields would please them with grains when they follow strict celibacy throughout the cultivation period. The peasants should remain pure when they enter their fields. They believe that the thread-like rifts are keeping them safe, and it is because of the purity they maintain. If any mistake happens, the whole community should have its ill effects. The novel Chemin was published in 1956, and its English translation by Anita Nair appeared in 2011. The novel depicts the life of the fisher community. There is also a movie adaptation of the novel directed by Ramu Karyat, starring Madhu Sheila as the protagonist. The folklore of the novel depicts that actually this is a short video. I think we don't have enough time to show that. So, folklore in Chemin. Um, on a mere plank of wood, the first fisherman had rowed through waves and currents to a point beyond the horizon. While the shore, his faithful wife had stood facing west, waiting. A storm blew up and churned the sea. Whales with their mouths gaping opened gathered. Sharks beat the water into a frenzy with their tails. The undertow dragged the boat and into a whirlpool. But he miraculously survived all these dangers, all of which determines whether a man who goes out to sea will return, and the only thing we can do as a woman is keep them safe with the minds and with true minds and bodies. Otherwise, they and their boards will be swallowed up by the undertow. The life of the man who goes out to sea rests in the hands of his woman on the shore. Here, purity is chastity. The fisherwoman uh, strictly follows these folklore. If any misconduct takes place, it will affect the whole shore. So the fisherwoman advocates girls of their community to follow the same and not to disgrace the shore. So purity here. In Dandadangari depicts the role of purity in order to have a good harvest and yield. In Chemin, fishing is also a harvest. Fishermen go out to the sea and come back only after several hours or days, and a good catch means a good harvest. In both the cases, it is believed that harvest is completely dependent on purity the workers maintain. The purity is in both the cases means sexual abstinence. In Randidangari, it is the celibacy followed by the peasants. In Chemin, the purity is maintained uh, with chastity. That is, in both cases, it is the sexual abstinence. While analyzing both the cases as depicted in Randadangari and Chemin, the folklore is framed for a utility motive. And in Randadangari, the peasants' complete dedication and physical labor is uh, utilized by framing such a folklore. Puttanadan fields, which are erected with the hardship of peasants, need to be maintained intact or in order to get a good harvest and yield. Strict scrutiny is needed, and the water should be frequently bailed out, and the crops should be protected from the water and the other pests. So it demands a good watch. Thus, men are entertained to be in the fields devoid of any deviation of the deviation to the family concerns, while the peasants are reminded of their duty to serve and feed the whole humanity by the rules, but they are subjugated in their private life, denying their basic need of such a life. Fishing is a challenging job that demands hard work, mental and physical labor, focus, bravery, and confidence. Even the job assures no steady income or yield because fishing is highly dependent on wind, undercurrent of the sea, and the weather, etc. Yet here the folklore says that the life of men out in the sea depends on the women's virtue of chastity. Purity as chastity and that is celebrated as a virtue. But when any issues like tornado or tsunami occurs, that are counted as women's misconduct. So the very next moment, the women are disgraced. The source group in the folklore stated in Jandadangari is thus elucidated as the landlords with a utility motive. The landlords in a caste society, especially. And while the source group of the folklore as depicted in Chemin is the men of a patriarchal society who disgraces their destiny because of the misconduct of women. Now we can conclude that the folklore is used as a tool of subjugation and it acts as a component in the power dynamics. Thank you.
Thank you, Ajisha, for your critical insights on the aspect of power structures within folklore and how folklore is used as for subjugation of the communities and the members of the communities represented in the novels that you had selected. Thank you for such a wonderful presentation. I would like to call the next participant in this session, Ruchi, Pandey and Mansi, research scholars, University of Lucknow. The topic of their presentation is Vernacular Time and Folk Culture in the Ecological Imagination of Amitav Ghosh. Ruchi, Pandey, are you there? Yeah, Mansi. Okay. Yeah, please start your presentation.
Good evening, respected chair, distinguished scholars, and fellow participants. First, I wanted to thank YFC conference for giving us such a wonderful platform to present our ideas. I am Mansi, a junior research scholar from Department of English and Modern European Languages at University of Lucknow, Uttar Pradesh. And I'm presenting this paper together with Ruchi Pandey, a fellow researcher from the same department. Our paper is titled Vernacular Time and Folk Culture in the Ecological Imagination of Amitav Ghosh. The central argument of this paper is the way societies understand time deeply shapes their relationship with nature. Modern Western thought largely understands time as linear, meaning it moves in a straight line from past to present and towards the future. However, many indigenous cultures understand time not as linear but as cyclic and relational, where past, present, and future are the one. They coexist altogether, simultaneously. Through the works of Amitav Ghosh, especially The Living Mountain and The Nutmeg Curse, we explore how vernacular temporalities rooted in folk culture and indigenous knowledge system offer alternative ways of thinking about time and the ecological crisis of present day. Let me quickly share my PPT with you guys. I hope this PPT is visible.
Yes, it is visible.
Thank you. Let me begin by briefly discussing the dominant idea of time in modern Western thought. Since the Enlightenment, time has often been understood as a linear progression, where history moves forward from a primitive past towards a more advanced future. Within this framework, progress becomes the central value. Scientific advancement, in industrial growth, and economic expansion are seen as signs that humanity is moving forward. However, this linear model also produces certain consequences. When time is understood primarily as progress and acceleration, it encourages societies to focus on constant development and future growth. As a result, nature is often treated as a resource to be exploited for economic expansion. Many scholars today argue that this modern conception of time is closely linked with colonialism, capitalism, and environmental extraction. Therefore, the ecological crisis we face today is not only an environmental problem, but also a temporal problem, a problem of how we understand time itself. In contrast to linear understanding, many indigenous cultures understand time as cyclic, relational, and layered. As you can see on my screen, there is a circular model of time. Time in this model is experienced as circular and dynamic rather than linear and rigid. What is important is that such understanding of time is multidimensional. A good way to understand such perspective is to think of ourselves in a body of water. Imagine time as a pond we can swim through. However, we cannot pull it apart or separate it. Time works similarly as it is around us every moment, operating in a dynamic way. This means we are surrounded by concentric time circles. That is to say, one circle of time surrounds us and another circle surrounds that circle, followed by another circle, and so on. Eventually, what happens with this model is that those events that are believed to be more important and are considered closer in time, and those that are less important are further away in time. This circularity is also prominent in languages of some indigenous people. For example, in Maori culture, the word for past, mua, also means in front, suggesting that past is visible and known, while future is what remains unseen. This is where Amitav Ghosh's work becomes extremely important. At this point, I would like to invite my co-presenter, Ruchi Pandey, to discuss how these ideas appear in Amitav Ghosh's literary work.
Thank you, Mansi. Let me take this discussion forward. Amitav Ghosh provides powerful literary examples of non-linear and ecological conceptions of time. One important example is his short narrative, The Living Mountain. In this text, Time is presented not as chronological sequence, but as cyclical and mythic. The narrative blends memory, dream, myth, and environmental crisis. At one point, the narrator describes her experience as feeling like a dream or perhaps a memory of a story told by her grandmother. This moment blurs the boundaries between past and present, suggesting that the stories and memories continue to live within the present moment. A similar argument appears in Ghosh's non-fiction work, that is, The Nutmeg Curse. Here, Ghosh examines the history of Banda Island, where European colonial powers violently seized the control of nutmeg plantations in the 17th century. This history demonstrates how colonial expansion imposed a linear capitalist understanding of time, where land and nature were valued only for economic profit. In contrast, the indigenous people of the Banda Islands viewed their landscape as a living network of relationships, where nutmeg trees, volcanoes, and human communities were deeply interconnected. By recovering these vernacular ecological perspectives, Ghosh suggests that the climate crisis cannot be understood only through modern scientific frameworks. Instead, we must also pay attention to traditional ecological knowledge and indigenous temporalities. To conclude our paper, which argues that the ecological crisis of the Anthropocene requires us to rethink the very concept of time. Modern linear time promotes the idea of constant progress, development, and extraction, which have contributed to environmental destruction, whereas the vernacular and indigenous temporalities emphasize cycles, relationship, and intergenerational responsibility. As Edmund Burke famously observed, society is a partnership not only between those who are living, but between those who are living, those who are dead, and those who are to be born. Thank you. This is all we wanted to discuss. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruchi and Mansi. Thank you for throwing light on the idea of cyclical time and vernacular time in folk culture, as represented in the novels of Amitav Ghosh, and also the need to rethink like time as we know in general from the European perspective as linear and not cyclical. Thank you so much for such a novel idea on time. I will just move to the next participant. The next participant is Meenakshi U and Barkha Agnihotri, postgraduate students from IIT Madras. The topic of the presentation, or the title of the presentation, is Remediating the Folk Motifs and Narrative World Building in Indian Cinema. Meenakshi and Barkha, are you there?
Yes, we're here. I'll just be sharing our presentation.
Yes, yes.
You just let me do it.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Meenakshi Yu, a postgraduate student at IIT Indore, and this paper is co-authored with Barkha Agnihotri, a postgraduate student at IIT Madras. Today, we will be presenting our paper titled Remediating the Folk Motifs and Narrative World Building in Indian Cinema. This paper examines This paper examines how folklore functions within contemporary Indian supernatural cinema, particularly in films that experiment with cinematic universes, superhero narratives, and VFX-driven storytelling. In recent years, Indian cinema has increasingly adopted narrative structures that are strongly influenced by global cinematic models, especially like Hollywood franchise films. These structures include shared universes, serialized storytelling, and visually intensive spectacle driven by digital effects. However, These storytelling forms are relatively new within the Indian cinematic context. Because audiences are still becoming familiar with these narrative structures, filmmakers often rely on culturally recognizable frameworks to make make them accessible. One such framework is folklore. Now, folklore functions as a culturally familiar system that helps audiences recognize and engage with emerging cinematic forms. By embedding supernatural narratives within recognizable mythic traditions, filmmakers can introduce unfamiliar cinematic techniques and narrative structures in ways that remain culturally legible. Now, building on this particular observation, the central argument of our paper is that folklore in Indian supernatural cinema is remediated in multiple ways, forming a spectrum between what can be described as modular remediation and deep remediation. Now, mainstream cinematic universes, particularly those emerging from Bollywood, often employ modular remediation. In this model, folklore is abstracted into interchangeable motifs, such as, let's say, archetypal, spirits, curses, or supernatural figures that can be easily adapted and recombined across films. This approach allows folklore to function as a flexible narrative resource that supports scalability, trans-regional accessibility, as well as franchise building. In contrast, regional films such as Loka Chapter 1 Chandra, which is a Malayalam film, demonstrate what can be understood as deep remediation. In this case, folklore is not treated as a detachable motif, but as the underlying ontology of the narrative world. Mythological structures shape the rules of the universe, inform character motivations, as well as determine the logic of world building. Through this comparison, our paper argues that regional cinema demonstrates an alternative model for integrating folklore within contemporary media. Rather than simplifying mythic traditions for wider circulation, regional films can preserve mythic density while still operating within globalized cinematic forms. This challenges the assumption that folklore must be flattened or abstracted in order to function within large-scale media industries. Now, the theoretical framework for this particular study that we have chosen are primarily on J. David Bolter and Richard Grusin's concept of remediation. Remediation describes how older cultural forms are reshaped and reinterpreted when they are translated into newer media environments. Within the context of this particular paper, remediation explains how folklore is not simply reproduced in cinema, but it is reconfigured through modern visual technologies, narrative conventions, and industrial practices. The study also draws on Alan Dender's understanding of folklore as expressive culture embedded within specific communities and social contexts. Now, coming to the review of literature, existing scholarship on folklore and cinema provides important context for this analysis. Research highlights how folklore can function as a translational interface that allows culturally recognizable narratives to circulate across wider audiences. And secondly, scholars note that horror and supernatural genres often rely on familiar symbolic structures to generate affect. Thirdly, recent work on regional cinema shows that folklore can be reimagined as a structural narrative framework that preserves vernacular myth systems while also enabling new forms of storytelling. By building on these insights, our paper explores how different cinematic contexts produce different models of folkloric remediation within contemporary Indian cinema. I will now hand over the presentation to my co-author, Barkha.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
First, I would make it storytelling. So,
Excuse me, Barkha. Your voice is a bit, it's not very clear.
Is it better now?
It is better, but it's like it is not very clear. The voice is not clear. It's lagging.
I'm sorry, I wasn't able to- if I'm now, I'll continue. Otherwise, Lakshi can continue.
I think your voice is not very clear. Can the other person, Meenakshi, can you
Yes,
continue with
sure.
your presentation? Yes.
Sure, ma'am. I will continue the presentation. So yeah, now coming to our first case study, that is the Maddock Horror Comedy Universe. This examined in this paper is the Maddock Horror Comedy Universe. This franchise represents Bollywood's attempt to develop interconnected cinematic storytelling through films such as Sree, Bhedia, and Munjia. Now, if you look at these films, they draw heavily on supernatural folklore, but they do so in a very particular way. Rather than relying on highly localized mythologies tied to specific communities or regions, the film generalized supernatural archetypes that circulate widely across Indian popular culture, like female spirits, curse-based narratives, and haunted spaces. Because these archetypes are already broadly recognizable, they allow the films to construct a pan-Indian folkloric vocabulary. This vocabulary does not belong to any one specific region, but instead draws from a shared symbolic repertoire that audiences across different linguistic and cultural contexts can easily recognize. As a result, folklore in the Maddock universe functions less as a deeply embedded cosmological system and more as a flexible narrative resource. Supernatural motifs can be introduced and expanded across multiple films without requiring extensive cultural explanation. This modular use of folklore supports the franchise building logic of cinematic universes, where narrative elements must remain scalable and accessible to wide audiences. Now, coming to our second case study, which is Loga, Chapter 1, Chandra, which is a Malayalam film. This particular film represents a different approach to folklore within contemporary Indian cinema. Unlike the Maddock universe, Loga constructs its cinematic world through regionally embedded mythologies drawn from local storytelling traditions. Folklore is not treated as a detachable motif that can be inserted into the narrative. Instead, myth functions as the structural foundation of the story world itself. The narrative logic of the film emerges from mythological structures that shape the universe itself. These traditions influence character motivations, narrative conflicts, and the broader cosmological framework within which the story unfolds. At the same time, the film combines these regionally rooted mythologies with globally recognizable narrative conventions, particularly those associated with superhero storytelling and serialized franchise cinema. Through this combination, Loga produces a hybrid cinematic form in which regional mythology is articulated through narrative as well as visual structures that are legible within global popular culture. To conclude our paper, the comparison between these two case studies demonstrates that folklore remediation in Indian supernatural cinema does not operate through a single model. Instead, it exists along a spectrum. At one end of the spectrum, mainstream cinematic universes such as Maddock Horror Comedy franchise employ what can be described as modular remediation. In this model, folklore is simplified into flexible motifs that can be easily circulated across films and accessed by diverse audiences. While these strategies support large-scale franchise expansion, it also tends to reduce the mythic density and cultural specificity of folkloric traditions. At the other end of the spectrum lies the approach represented by Loga, Chapter 1 Chandra. Here, folklore undergoes deep remediation, in which myth functions as the structural ontology of the narrative world rather than as a detachable narrative device. This comparison suggests that the treatment of folklore within cinema is closely shaped by industrial context and narrative ambition. Mainstream industries prioritize accessibility and scalability because they profit from commercial audiences, while regional cinema can sustain greater mythic density as well as cultural specificity because they assume cultural literacy in their audience. In this sense, regional cinema plays an important role in preserving mythic plurality within increasingly globalized media environments. That will be from our side. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Meenakshi and Barkha. And thank you for your interesting take on regional cinema and the use of folklore, as also the regional cinema as an alternative discourse of folklore. Thank you for your case studies of the films that you have done. I would move to the next participant, Pooja Malepula, independent researcher. Please pardon me if I'm not pronouncing your name correctly. Bathukamma, deep inquiries into the erasure and place-making process of the living heritage is the topic of the presentation. Are you there, Pooja?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Yes. Please
Let
continue
me
with
share
the
my screen.
presentation.
Yeah, is my screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Make it like you can slideshow, then it will be visible the entire screen. Yes, it's visible.
Okay. Good evening, one and all. I'm Pooja Malapula from Kakatiya, Hyderabad. Batkama deep inquiries in the erasure and placemaking process of the living heritage was the topic from my MA thesis from Department of Fine Arts, Art History and Visual Studies, University of Hyderabad, submitted in the year 2024. It is an extraordinary opportunity for me to get back to the university and present my work again with the new findings. Batkama is a floral festival celebrated mostly by women in Telangana. It is deeply connected to nature, water bodies, and seasonal flowers. Traditionally, the festival was performed around the water bodies where women adorn themselves beautifully and gather in circles, synchronizing the claps and movements. They sing the folklores and later immerse the Batkama in the water. In the figure on the right side top, you can see different kinds of seasonal flowers used in making Batkama. Flowers like Gulugu, Celosia, Sita Jada, Coxcomb, Banti, Marigold, Chamanti, Chrysanthemum, and Tangedu, Thanoscasia, Gummadi, which means pumpkin, leaves and flowers, are used together to arrange this floral arrangement in a conical shape, which looks like the figure in this figure called Batkama. This is the floral arrangement together. After many years of struggle, Telangana region formed a separate state in the year 2014. Telangana state adopted this festival as a state art. Batkama has become a state-sponsored cultural symbol representing Telangana's identity. Because of this transformation, the festival is not only revived but also reshaped in new ways. The image you see on the right is the representation of Batkama festival in a procession at Tangband in the year 2014. The study asked three main questions. How has Batkama transformed in urban spaces? What elements of tradition are being remembered or forgotten? How do public celebrations reshape the cultural memory? Following the theoretical argument, the women in this picture can be understood as the agents who sustain and transmit folklores. I borrow the argument from Peter Burke in History as Social Memory, published in 2018, who explains that social memory is selective. Societies remember certain aspects of the past while forgetting others. This helps us understand why Batkama is now remembered mainly as a symbol of Telangana's pride, while
Pooja, you are not audible.
furthermore, I also look into the work of Mansi and Amitav. Case study, Rain Song of Vajramma. One of my important field encounters was with Mrs. Abhineni Vajramma. She is 65-year-old. She was born and brought up in Kukatpalli and was married at the age of 10. She, along with her family, currently reside at Devistana Homes, Venkatanagar Colony, Kukatpalli. She is a living archive of Batkama. The song which shared goes like this. వనదేవుడమ్మ ఉయ్యాలో అడవి మాయలోడు ఉయ్యాలో కోటి మాయలోడు ఉయ్యాలో కొంటాన దేవ ఉయ్యాలో కలియుగం మీద ఉయ్యాలో కాలమైన చేసెను ఉయ్యాలో బయటి రాజ్యాలన్నీ ఉయ్యాలో చూసొస్తానన్నాడు ఉయ్యాలో. So, this song might have been written when there was no rainfall in the region. A woman sings this song on the rain from the perspective of the land. The land has become dead, but yet he is not here. He went on traveling across countries. It's been ages and still couldn't find the way back. She's scolding and asking him to return soon to her. Finally, because he misses his beloved, he returns back and the land regains its consciousness. The first misconception is that Batkama only happens during the time of post-fest harvest, which is not true. Batkama is the oral musical narratives of women, where women will do the day-to-day work and do Batkama. They are in conversation with Batkama through musical lyrical stories. They complain to Batkama, they share their love to Batkama, they share their pain to Batkama, they share their intimate stories to Batkama. So this is one of the examples which shows that Batkama is not just for the duration of autumn time. This is the song sung during the rainy season. Batkama, which was the mundane everyday life of women, became contextualized in urban space. Traditionally, Batkama is made with seasonal wildflowers and medicinal plants. These plants were believed to help purify water bodies and prevent seasonal diseases. But today, because of urbanization and water scarcity, market flowers are often used instead of wild plants. Some people create paper Batkamas. Marginalized communities sometimes make them using cow dung, which is later used as cooking fuel. These changes reflect how economic and environmental conditions reshape ritualistic practices. Most existing studies focus on Batkama as a cultural festival or a symbol for Telangana's identity. However, there is very less focus on urban transformation of festival and the erasure of oral traditions. My research attempts to address this gap by studying Batkama as a living heritage shaped by memory, place, and urban change. Batkama today is both revived and transformed. On the right side, as you could see in this image, Batkama folklores are replaced by trendy DJ remix songs, government taking initiatives to produce new song albums every year, movies capturing the vibrant celebration with modern day songs. While it has gained visibility and political recognition, some of its earlier elements such as ecological practices, long-form songs, and intimate community gatherings are slowly fading. By studying these changes, we can better understand how living traditions evolve with shifting social, cultural, and spatial contexts. Through this study, my take would be creating a digital archive to record the folklores collecting from the older generations, also archiving visuals of ritualistic practices for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Pooja, for your presentation on Batukama as a living heritage and not only a symbolic relic. The women's narratives and how they have transformed, and they are transforming because of the urbanization and commercial success, as we know, and the erasure of the oral traditions, which should be taken into account when doing the research. I'm hoping that you will do a proper good work on the digital archiving part. I'll move to the next participant, Sunyogita S, Assistant Professor, Sree Krishnaswamy College for Women. The topic of a presentation is Ritual, Labor and Power, an ethnographic study of Pongal in rural Tamil Nadu. Sunyogita, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. Is my voice is audible and presentation is visible?
Your voice is audible. Your presentation is, yes, it is visible now. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So first of all, I thank the organizing committee for giving me this wonderful opportunity to present my paper. Myself, Sanya Gita, assistant professor from Chennai. So my paper is about a festival which is called as Pongal. We celebrate vastly in Tamil Nadu. Uh, about Pongal, we all generally know about Pongal is about the agriculture festival where we show our gratitude to the sun, the grains, and the cow, which help us to do in farming and everything, the weapons also, and the tools we used for farming is also, it's being presented to the god, and then we feel gratitude towards that. So basically this particular celebration is called as the anti-brahminical festival, where in other festivals you can see it is an implication of brahminical society, where you can see the Trinity God will be there in Diwali, or in Diwali or Navratri. You have these all the Trinity gods you present in here. So what makes more special about the Pongal is that we show our love and we show our respect towards our smaller deities, which in Tamil we call it as Kulasamigal, where the particulars god's sword or sickle is being placed, and then we worship that. So likewise, I have taken a particular region which is called as Tirupattur, a small district in Sivagangai, which is in Tamil Nadu. I have taken this particular place for my research. My research, which I am going to show, is two things, which is the intercaste hierarchy which is present inside the Pongal festival, and also the gender domination which is present inside the festival of Pongal. So first of all, Tamil Nadu, in this particular region, I have found that there are two most dominant castes in there, which is Devendra Kulavellalar and the Parayar. So these both come under the category of SC. So they have a single deity, which is called as the Malayasi Amman or the Virai or the Veerappan, Karpan. We have all these kind of deities, and then also we worship them. So at a particular point of time, where I can see there is a particular intercaste hierarchy, even though these both are come under the same category of SC. It is practically known that Devendra Kulavellalar is at the highest stage, and at the lowest stage we have the Parayars. So I am going to show how the Pongal is celebrated in these two different communities despite being in the same locality. So first of all, major thing which I see is that if we make a particular thing called as a palayam. Palayam is that we make pongal and then we give it to the god. So this is a particular picture which I've seen. It is called as the palayam. So a priest from the particular temple, he comes with a pot and then he collects all the pongals which we have given to that, and then that priest takes it to the temple. And this culture is not being given to the Devendra Kula communities. This is only done to the Parayar, because we can't go near the deities, or we can't go near the temples. So another most important thing is that where Devendra Kulavellalar can able to celebrate Pongal near the temple, where in my left side you can see all these women are doing a community Pongal where they will be doing it opposite the temple. On my right side, this is the Parayar community where they can do their where they do their Pongal in their home. Outside you can see there is not, it's in a community wise, it's like something devastating to see. So even though it is a very special celebration, they are happy, but then I can see the marginalization which is present inside there. So for this, I have taken Pierre Bourdieu, who is a French culturalist and a culture theorist. He calls this as the cultural exclusion, which is called as the where a particular community or a particular group is being marginalized, or they are not comes within the power, which the exclusion of Parayar community from the direct interaction with the deity, and the intermediate role of a priest collecting the offerings in a common pot signifies the spiritual agency, and also the marginalized stages within the religious sphere. So I call it as the cultural exclusion. So other than that, we have more traditions, which is the palayam also, and then we also make a pot of a curry, a sambar, a lentil stew, which we use the 21 types of veggies or curries which we use that. So in majorly these Devendra Kovelala, they won't use the tubes, shoots, and then the roots vegetables, because which is very similar to the Brahminical society where they don't use garlics or shallots or any sweet potatoes in their meals. So we pariahs use the different type of sambars, which we use sweet potatoes into it. We use small shallots and then garlics to our food. So there is even a very materialistic, and then the culinary marginalization is also present in the Pongal also. So coming to the role genders in the particular festival of Pongal, we see the male role and the female role. In the women role, we see she cleans, cooks, she collects all these varag. Varag means which is the branches of the palm tree, and then she comes and cleans all the home, because a Pongal is a 4-day celebration. For all the 4 days, women are being forced to do the domestic works. And then also in the place of ritual where the elderly man comes and then he shows his face, he breaks the coconut into the pot of a pongal, where when the milk comes, we women shout as pongalo pongal, pongalo pongal. But a man comes with a coconut and then he breaks and then he puts the water into that pongal. That's how the role I have witnessed in there for the past 10 years. So the next thing is that why this ritual is going on, why they particular men has to do only the cleaning of cows and then they just go and sit in the savukai. This is called as the savukai, which women are not allowed to sit in the savukai. This is a main place where the meetings will be happening here. As you can see the picture, it has only men are sitting over there. So women are being spectators. They are only being domesticated. You can see they are just witnessing something. So what is they witnessing is that even after every Pongal celebration at evening 6 o'clock, the person gets infested with a god, and then he dances and then he has a special type of rituals. He shouts and then he stands in the nail. He also has some kind of weapons in his hand, where the pariahs are not allowed to go near him. But then these Devendra Kula Vellala people, they can go and get blessings from the god, but the pariahs are being only the spectators. As you can see in the right side of the image, the women who are standing beside the god, the person who has been mixed with God, is the Devendra Kula Vellalas, and the girls who are upside there are the pariahs. They are not allowed to go there because they are being only the visitor. They have to see and then they have to pray the god afar. So see, this kind of marginalization has been come into the Pongal celebration, where in Tamil we call it as Samattuva Pongal. Samattuva Pongal means, Samattuva means equality. So beside this deep religious and then rituals, we find this very awe-striking, because this particular village where I go for Pongal is my own native place. I found this and then I wanted to make a paper out of this, how ritualization and then the traditions are being the chained for the marginalized as well as for the women. So you can see women are making the palayam or making the pongal with the palm tree branches, and then also they make the sambar. They have to sit there for 2 hours, but then the men sits and goofs around in the savukai for hours. So, and then also you can see in this particular ritual, where we can see women are making the ritual palayam. Palayam is a plate where we give to the god. So you can see the palayam ritual is made by the women. The particular women is giving offering, putting it all in the leaf and doing something. At next slide, we can see a man. He comes there, he just lights the camphor, he goes around and then comes back. So this is kind of the role which is done in all festivals. I'm not particularly telling in Pongal, but then in all festivals, women are being domesticated. So in Judith Butler, she tells that gender is a performance, where gender is a role is done by male and female. And also for the conclusion, which for the casteism I have a different conclusion, and then for the gender I have a different conclusion, is that for casteism, Ambedkar have truly said that true equality could be attained only through the annihilation of the caste system, which is necessitated over the spiritual practice and the conversion of Buddhism as an emancipation. And then also in women and in the gender aspect, I particularly term, and Judith Butler, I have adopted from Judith Butler, which is called as the graded inequality. This caste system also, plus the women being a woman, which beings as a double standard, finds a parallel and the graded performativity of gender roles, where certain performance grant greater social capital and access to the power. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunyogita. Your exploration of gender roles and the concept of cultural exclusion in Pongal is indeed something to think about and also rethink about, so that we can properly document it and keep it for our future generations. Thank you to all the participants for participating, and this was a very multi-dimensional session, I must say. Now I will just, I have 10 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes for discussion. If anybody has any questions to any of the participants, they can go on with their questions. We don't have a lot of time, but we have a little bit of time. So if you want to ask, anybody wants to know anything, any feedback, any comments, you can just ask it right now. Anyone with any questions or any feedback, anything? Okay, I don't think a lot of participants have many. I mean, I don't think anybody has any questions, but I know that it was a very multi-dimensional session. I will not ask any questions, but I want to wish you, all of you, all the best for doing whatever you are doing. It was very interesting to listen to so many ideas in such a short span of time, especially those who are doing work on film. I think the paper was on Loka chapter 2, Chandra, I think, who has done the paper on, was on the idea of film and how mythology is presented, or supernatural is presented in films which are regional. It's very interesting to see that you are doing such kind of research. It's very interesting, and I hope we also rethink about our ideas that are already prevalent. And also Abhishek's paper, which is on bioethics and how plants and human beings are interrelated, mutual dependence. It is a very upcoming field, and people are doing a lot of work on plant humanities and critical plants studies. Thank you to all the participants once again, and the organizers for arranging such a beautiful conference and such wonderful presenters who have come from all over the country as well as from outside the country. Thank you. I would pass on the mic to our organizers. I think Moitri and Rusha, if they are there, can you please take up from here? Moitri and Rusha, yeah.
Thank you very much, all of you, for this very interesting presentation. Anyone has any kind of question or anything? I don't think ma'am already said that there is, no questions or anything, right, ma'am?
Yes, nobody asked any questions. I hope they will have, but they have to think a little bit on whatever has been presented. Yeah.
So maybe we can conclude this presentation right now, if no one has any questions or anything. Then once again, thank you very much, all of you, and good evening once again.